Hello! Today we are diving into the details of crafting a melee-focused ranger build in Rangers of Shadow Deep, designed to maximize damage and hold strong against the various dangers. We'll break down the ranger's creation process step by step using the Standard Edition and a Gathering of Heroes rulebooks. From stat allocation and heroic abilities, to spells, traits and gear, I'll guide you through every choice needed to enhance both your combat power and tactical flexibility on the battlefield. This video builds on the concepts covered in my recent Ultimate Combat tutorial, where we explored the nuances of melee mechanics in depth. If you haven't watched that yet, it's worth checking out after this. But for now, let's get started. In Rangers of Shadow Deep, you usually get 10 build points to spend on things like stats, heroic abilities, spells, skills, traits, and recruitment points. If you want, you can squeeze out a bit more by taking limitations, which can help you specialize but come with their own challenges. Let's break it all down and see how it all comes together. Stats. Every ranger begins with the same base stat line, which looks something like this. You have 3 build points to spend here, but you can only upgrade each one once. Even if I wanted to put all 3 points into fight, I simply can't. Also, armor doesn't change here, as it is fully based on the type of gear you use. In my opinion, you don't need to spend all 3 points right away. 1 point should definitely go into fight, bringing it up to +3. For the second build point, I choose between health and will to improve your resilience. Personally, I think health is a better choice at the start. Early on, you won't face many will checks, but the extra health can make a big difference in surviving combat. As for move, unless you wish to add some into it, I wouldn't really bother, as the most fights happen on a small table and monsters tend to come towards you anyway. And once again, an extra health just seems to be a smarter option, especially if we end up constantly fighting. Heroic abilities and spells. Our ranger is a unique war unit with its powers and tactical advantages, which are represented in his special martial capabilities and spell knowledge. We have up to 5 build points to spend here, and for a melee-focused ranger, we are definitely going to max this out. This category offers plenty of choices, but I think there is a core set of heroic abilities and spells every melee-oriented ranger should consider first. Let's start with some of the heroic abilities. I think some might include Hand of Fate in this list as well, since it lets you reroll any die in the game, including combat rolls. While it might seem like a great choice, I don't consider it a better option compared to the ones herein. It feels a bit too random to me. There is no guarantee that your reroll will result in a better outcome, even though statistically it might. Personally, I prefer abilities that give me more control and provide consistently better odds. But again, this is just a matter of personal preference. There are also some useful spells our melee ranger could consider. I might prefer Enchanted Steel over Weakness because it guarantees success and lasts for an entire scenario. I think it is more versatile as it can help in multiple fights, while Weakness is more situational, giving you an edge against a particular target. A boss fight maybe. If you want to go even further, you can unlock unique heroic abilities by investing 1 additional build point into the prerequisite rare heroic ability trait, which allows us to pick rare and powerful options available in the archetypes list. Here are some great picks for melee builds. Keep in mind that investing in the trait to unlock these abilities counts against your trait build points, not your heroic abilities. So, if you're planning to pick one of these at character creation, you'll need to allocate 1 point for the trait and 1 for the ability itself. That's 2 build points total. Having said that, so what would be my pick though? For this build, I'd prioritize the following: Focus, Enchanted Steel, Deadly Strike over Powerful Blow, Flashing Blade, and Transpose. This build requires 5 build points spent on heroic abilities and spells, plus 1 additional build point allocated to traits. So let me explain my reasoning behind these choices. Focus is an obvious pick. It's almost like a cheat code. It significantly improves your odds in both fight rolls and skill checks, making it incredibly versatile. Enchanted Steel, like Focus, adds a reliable +1 to fight, increasing your chances of winning combats not just against a single enemy, but throughout the entire scenario. This also allows you to deal full damage to a variety of monsters. Deadly Strike further boosts your potential by increasing your critical hit chance, lowering the natural roll requirement to 18 or 19 instead of 20. If I'm lucky enough to acquire the 7 of Clubs Enchanted Sword from Guardian of Heroes treasure list, that threshold drops down to 17, raising the critical hit chance from 15 to 20%. This choice is pretty much hard for me, because the powerful blow can get me +3 to any damage in a fight, but yeah, I think I will keep powerful blow for the leveling. Adding Flashing Blade is another great choice. It grants a free attack action whenever you activate while in combat. Yes, it's expensive, but the benefit is undeniable. And lastly, a Transpose spell, which we have not initially included in the list as it may not directly improve our combat output, but it is considered a fantastic utility spell for gaining tactical advantages. It allows you to swap your melee ranger with any other companion when the situation demands it, providing excellent flexibility on the battlefield. While editing this video, I realized that I forgot to add the Eldritch Recall heroic ability. This heroic ability allows us to use any spell we already used within the scenario. For myself, I think I will just have this in mind when leveling up. However, you are welcome to revise the heroic ability list yourself. Now let's move on to the next step of the build. Skills. According to the rulebooks, you get 5 build points you can spend here during the character creation. But honestly, you can get by with spending a bare minimum. For each build point you get 8 points you can invest into the skills, by spreading them evenly between a total of 15 different skills. The allocation will primarily depend on your preference and playstyle, as neither of the skills are directly affecting your combat performance. However, let's discuss some, especially the ones which can add some benefits to the melee build. The first is Armory. As you progress through the game, you'll likely come across treasure weapons that need to be identified to unlock their hidden capabilities. This skill allows you to do that. Additionally, at higher levels of Armory, you'll always be considered equipped with at least a dagger. Similarly, Redrance is also used for identifying magical weapons or items, even though appears to be useful in lesser amount of cases. Another great skill is Ancient Law. Paired with the Determine Weakness trait, it allows you to gain an edge against specific types of monsters. Even if you don't invest in Determine Weakness right away, spending points on Ancient Law can be a good long-term choice in case you decide to pick up the trait later. The rest of the skills you choose will really depend on your personal goals and playstyle. Given all of this, I don't focus too much on skills during the character creation, since the Focus Heroic ability can cover any critical roles when needed really. Plus, any gaps in your skill set can be compensated by the right companion choices. However, if you do want to invest in skills, you can spend 1 build point and spread it across 8 different skills, raising them to +1 each. Here is a good list to consider: Armory, Redrance, Ancient Law, Leadership, Survival, Strength, Acrobatics, and Climb. Alternatively, you could save that build point and use it to get an extra 10 recruitment points instead. This is especially useful if you are playing solo or with just one other player, as it allows you to build a more specialized party to handle different tasks. Traits and limitations. According to a Gathering of Heroes, you can spend up to 2 build points on traits. Many of them just cost you a half build point, and you can even regain additional build points by taking limitations. While there are a lot of great options, I'll focus on traits that enhance damage dealing for this particular build. Here's what I've chosen. Since I want to invest in the Flashing Blade unique heroic ability, I'll need to unlock the rare heroic ability trait by spending 1 build point. Half a build point will go into Weapon Dedication, which ensures my weapons are sharp enough to deal +1 extra damage. The other half will go into the Favorite Enemy, which gives me a consistent +1/5 bonus against a specified type of monster. The last trait can also be paired with the Disease or Poison immunity, depending on an enemy type like Corporeal, Undead or Arachnids. This creates a strong defensive edge when fighting this type of enemies, but it will require an extra build point, which you can only get by investing in limitations. There are several minor limitations that can be taken without too much risk. One of these is no sense of direction. It makes your ranger bad at navigation rolls, but it's easy to mitigate that if you have a tracker companion who can handle navigation checks. Another good trait to consider is 2-weapon fighter. If you go this route, I'd recommend revising your heroic abilities to include Whirling Death instead of Flashing Blade. Whirling Death works much better with dual wielding, especially when fighting groups of enemies. There are a lot of other useful traits such as Heavy Armor Proficiency or the previously mentioned Determined Weakness, but we'll save those for higher levels. Let's move on to the next step. Gear. Our ranger has 6 available slots but can only use 5 of them at the start. Here's what I recommend to pick. First, heavy armor and a two-handed weapon. These are straightforward picks for a melee-focused ranger. However, if you prefer a dual-wielding setup based on the 2-weapon fighter trait, you can swap out the two-handed weapon for 2 one-handed weapons instead. Next, I'd suggest taking a throwing knife. While it's not as strong as a dagger in melee, it can still come in handy for short-range attacks. Finally, since we've chosen spells for this build, we are considered a spellcaster. I'd recommend bringing a spell book which allows us to keep one unused spell stored for the next scenario. This means you'll have an extra spell ready to go if you didn't use all your spells during the previous game. In our case, we are working with the Enchanted Steel and Transpose. Since Enchanted Steel lasts for an entire scenario, keeping an extra Transpose spell in your pocket gives you an extra use when you need to reposition quickly. Wrap up. So, what do we end up with? This build gives us a solid +3 fight as a passive bonus, with the potential to reach +10 to our combat score when fighting a favorite enemy and using all active heroic abilities and spells. Our critical hit chance increases to 15% compared to the standard 5%, and our damage is passively boosted by +3 thanks to the weapon dedication and our two-handed weapon. With heavy armor, our defense is strong, and while our shoot and wheel stats remain at the same default values, we start with the above average health. The only trade-off is our move, which is reduced by 1. However, we compensate for that with the Transpose spell, allowing us to swap places with a companion for tactical repositioning. When combined with the spell book in your inventory or the Eldritch Recall, we can find a situation when we could use Transpose twice per scenario, maximizing our mobility when needed. If we want further fine-tune the build, we can take a minor limitation like no sense of direction to free up a trait point. In this case, a choice would be disease or poison immunity, which pairs well with the favorite enemy trait, letting us deal extra damage while also avoiding negative effects from the specific type of enemy. And since we can also maintain our attacks being counted as a magic by using Enchanted Steel, we rarely have to worry about damage reduction against monsters with resistance to physical attacks. This build also lets us get 2 attack actions per activation if we are engaged in combat. Alternatively, if we go for dual wielding instead of two-handed weapon, we gain the ability to strike multiple enemies in one go, effectively replacing our Flashing Blade heroic ability with Whirling Death. Dual wielding trait also reduces enemy support bonuses when we are outnumbered, making it a strong choice for crowd control. All that wraps up today's build guide. If you'd like a deeper dive into melee combat mechanics, I highly recommend checking out this video next. Thank you for watching. That's all for now, and take care.